Hi, and welcome to Nathan Bell's podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So today, Nate would like to talk about his previous blog called Modern Culture Network.
Yeah, well, I wrote my blog after I finished with Renew Newcastle. I was with Renew Newcastle for about a year doing my documentary on busking in the nightlife. And then I started, after Renew Newcastle finished up, I didn't know what to do. So I decided I was going to focus my efforts on becoming a better writer. So I decided I was going to start writing a blog. So I decided to do it on Facebook. So I set up my Facebook page and I came up with the name Modern Culture Network because I had a series of epiphanies at the time about where I thought the world was going to go and what I thought the future was going to be like. And I'd been thinking about life and the future and culture and how I thought culture should be in our society and the world. And I also had a psychosis which was very spiritual, where I had epiphanies about what I felt the future would be like. And I'd been doing a great deal of research on the internet for a number of years about technology and a variety of issues, including politics and science and history and various things. So I had developed this big vision, this big perspective of the future and what I thought the future was going to be like. So I came up with the name Modern Culture Network, and I wanted my blog Modern Culture Network to reflect my vision for how society and culture should be and how I felt the culture of the future was going to be. So my vision for my blog was that I was going to write about all the things that I liked and that I thought the world should focus on and the things that I thought were important. So I set up the Facebook page Modern Culture Network, and at the time I wasn't with Reliability yet, but I had some basic graphic design skills, so I came up with some images and logos for the blog, and I started writing. And I started writing a few basic articles about my experience with psychosis and the spiritual psychosis that I had had and the eye-opening experiences I had had in psychosis. Then around this time, a few months after I started the blog, I had been in the psych ward and I was put with Reliability, and I started working on creativity with my creative mentors at Reliability. And also at the same time was the big Freedom of Information released by the American government of classified CIA documents, and I became very invested in researching those declassified Freedom of Information documents from the CIA, which forms a part of my vision for how the world should be and how culture should be, because I want to live in an informed culture where people scrutinise the government and where people know about freedom of information. So anyway, I started working on artworks with my mentors at Reliability, and that started to form a huge part of my blog Modern Culture Network. And I would post artworks that me and my graphic design animation mentor Tajin Lee were working on, and I would write blog posts about our artworks that we were working on, and I would also review the declassified documents from the CIA, and that formed a big part of the Modern Culture Network blog as well, because throughout the 3 years that I was writing the Modern Culture Network blog, I reviewed and posted links to about 100 of these declassified documents, where I would read the document and then I would write a short synopsis of the document and what it was about, and post it to the Modern Culture Network blog. And that was about trying to encourage a culture of scrutinising the government, and of understanding freedom of information releases and promoting knowledge and being informed. So I worked on there were numerous things on Modern Culture Network. It was a bit of a scattered cluster of different art and stuff, but overall there is a bigger vision in the blog Modern Culture Network. So I started at the time working on an animated version of my story, Kings of the New Age, The Quest of the Balancing Stones, with my animation mentor Tajin Lee from Reliability. And there's a bunch of images and cartoons and clips and stuff and concept art that we created over a few years available on Modern Culture Network, because of course you can still look at Modern Culture Network on Facebook. It's still available. And this is the logo for Modern Culture Network, which I did on the computers at Reliability. So there's a bunch of clips of the cartoon we were working on for Kings of the New Age. This was before I finished the book. And that's been put on hiatus now because it's just too big a project to create the cartoon, but that process of creating those images and creating those cartoon clips and that concept art really helped me to come up with the story and the plot for Kings of the New Age, The Quest of the Balancing Stones, which, as you might know, is now popular in Newcastle now that I published it 2 years ago, and I've sold over 600 copies. So all throughout Modern Culture Network are cartoons and clips and concept art for Kings of the New Age, The Quest of the Balancing Stones. And it's also this ruse about me being this psychic who's predicting a nuclear war. You know, I'm trying to create this myth around myself. It's all an act. It's just an act. It's not real. I don't really think I'm predicting a nuclear war. I'm not psychic. There is no prophecy. But I'm creating this theatrical act, this ruse that I'm a mystic with psychic powers who's predicting an atomic war. And I've been trying to create that myth in Newcastle for years, and I'm doing that now with Kings of the New Age and popularising that book, and I was doing it with Modern Culture Network. So there's all, on Modern Culture Network, there's all this graphic art about Kings of the New Age as I was writing the book, and different details of sections of the plot and the story and concept art. But back to the freedom of information stuff, my view of the culture I want is an informed culture where we scrutinise government and we study the behaviours of government, and that's why I reviewed the declassified CIA documents, and that formed a large portion of the content on Modern Culture Network. Most of the content on the blog is reviewed CIA documents, which I gave synopsis of the documents to get them out there, to get people interested in the subject. And I also wrote about a variety of other subjects, wrote many short pieces on the blog. I wrote about artificial intelligence, I wrote about alien life and alien civilizations, I wrote about psychosis, I wrote about geopolitics, I wrote about the threat of nuclear war, and I think over the course of the 3 years I was writing the blog, I probably wrote about 300 short articles on the blog, and that's all still available on Facebook under Modern Culture Network, so you can go and look that up. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing the blog, and I also spent a lot of money on Facebook advertising to push the posts from the blog out there. I wanted people to read them. I wanted people to read my writing. You know, I'm not in the business of making art that nobody looks at or writing stuff that nobody looks at. So I put it out there and promoted it on Facebook with Facebook advertising to get it out there to thousands of people. And I would always target my marketing in the Hunter Valley, Newcastle area, because I was trying to start a cultural upheaval in the Hunter Valley, Newcastle area. I'm trying to reach as many people as I can in the Hunter Valley area, Newcastle area, with this message of change and political reform and freedom of information, and this myth I'm creating that there's going to be a nuclear war and that I'm predicting it. And I'm trying to drill those ideas into as many people's heads as possible, so that hopefully if I can get it this way, hundreds of thousands of people around Newcastle and the Hunter will know that these are the things that I'm promoting and these are the ideas I'm promoting, and it will create this myth and it will inspire thousands of people to act. And what I'm trying to do is start a cultural upheaval and a movement in the Hunter Valley, Newcastle area, which will then spread throughout the world, because I'm totally delusional and I actually believe I can start this cultural art and cultural revolution. And I see the way to do that is to get in people's heads and incite them to also do political art and commentary and to take action. So it's like I'm trying to brainwash everyone. So I'm trying to brainwash as many people around the Newcastle Hunter area as I can to get into political action and activism and freedom of information, and to buy into this myth that I'm a psychic predicting a nuclear war, so that they'll all start thinking that way, and then they'll all start communicating with each other, and this will become a theme in the community to talk about these ideas and action and political action and art and cultural revolution, and this will start a new cultural renaissance. So that's why I spent close to $5,000 over 3 years on Facebook marketing for my blog Modern Culture Network. And at the time, I haven't written Modern Culture Network in about 4 or 5 years, but when I was writing it for 3 years back then, thousands of people read my content because I was pumping money into Facebook advertising to push my content out on the community so that thousands of people would read it. So I made sure that thousands of people were reading my content because I wanted to get through to as many people as I possibly could. So a lot of people read Modern Culture Network. I never profited off it, even though I had a shop link to it. I never made any sales, but that's fine because it's all just about getting it out there and inspiring people to think. And I also reviewed music on the blog, and I reviewed movies, and I talked about science fiction. And I just loved writing my blog, and I wrote it for about 3 years. And the only reason I stopped writing Modern Culture Network is because somebody hacked my Facebook profile and locked me out of my Facebook profile and shut it down. So I actually lost access to Modern Culture Network, which was very unfortunate. So I'm not able to control the page anymore. So I had to abandon Modern Culture Network. Had that not happened, I'd still be writing the blog, and I'd still be paying Facebook to push the ads out there to get people reading it. But I was locked out of Modern Culture Network, so I can't write it anymore. But yeah, many people read Modern Culture Network when I was writing, and I had a lot of good discussions with people. People would communicate in the comment section, and we were having a lot of conversation. And my view about starting movements and inspiring change is you've got to start a conversation. The only way you can do it is to start a conversation and start debate. So that's what I've been trying to do. And I've been trying to do that for years in Newcastle, because I figure if I can brainwash enough people in a small area, they'll all become convinced of what I'm selling, because you're a salesman when you're an activist, you're selling a political argument. So they'll all become convinced of what I'm selling, and then they'll talk and they'll communicate with others, and it will spread. So I'm this delusional maniac with schizophrenia who actually diehard believes that I'm going to start the revolution. You know, that's why it's Nathan Bell and the Revolutionaries on YouTube, because I'm going to start the revolution. But it's not a violent revolution. It's an art and cultural renaissance which is going to spread throughout the world and liberate humanity into knowledge and truth. That's how delusional I am, but I embrace it. I believe in being grandiose and having delusions of grandeur, but as long as you take action and you actually do things that affect the world, then who cares if it's a bit grandiose, you know? As long as you're actually taking action, you might have a chance of achieving something. So I want to start an art and cultural revolution, and I'm doing everything in my power to do that. And my blog, Modern Culture Network, was a part of that vision that I'm putting out into the world. So if you want to go and check out Modern Culture Network, it's still available on Facebook, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff on there. There's all these CIA documents that I reviewed. There's stuff about science fiction and science and history, and my views on politics and nuclear war and all this fascinating stuff. And I wrote the blog for about 3 years, and you can go through it, and there's about 200-300 posts on the blog, and they're all very elaborate and complicated discussions that I was making. So get into it and go and check out Modern Culture Network if you think it's interesting. It's just one of many things that I've done over the years to promote art and culture in the community. So there's a bit about my blog, Modern Culture Network. So drop a comment in the comment section about if you've ever written a blog or what blogs you like to read.